Have you ever had this quiet, haunting feeling that you're not really living your own life? You follow the schedule, you do the tasks, you go through the motions, and yet something inside feels caged. It's not dramatic. You're not falling apart. But deep down, there's a discomfort, a restlessness, a sense that you're walking through life half asleep, wearing a mask that even you forgot how to take off. It feels like boredom, like fatigue, like apathy, but it's not. It's the soul's first scream muffled by years of pretending. It's the early pulse of your dormant strength, trying to wake up. And here's the problem. Society has trained you to run away from that feeling, to silence it, to pathologize it as depression, or laziness, or burnout, and then medicate it away. They told you, be happy. Don't feel too much. Don't ask hard questions. You were taught to chase comfort, to choose peace over progress, to stay safe, polite, pleasing, and numb. But Nietzsche, he saw it differently. To him, this obsession with happiness was nothing more than a seductive surrender, a clever excuse to avoid the pain of becoming, because true growth, it's violent, uncomfortable, radical, and most of all, it's earned. The irony, that hollow feeling you're trying to escape, might be the truest thing you've felt in years. Because it's not the sign of something wrong. It's the call of something real. It's your power, trapped in routine. It's your will, buried under normal. And it's tired of being quiet. So ask yourself, are you truly alive or just functioning? Because the longer you ignore that question, the easier it gets to mistake survival for life. There is a force inside you, not emotional, not intellectual, but instinctive. A primal drive you didn't learn from books or school. It was there before you knew how to name it. And it's still there, waiting. Nietzsche called it the will to power. Not the power to rule over others. Not manipulation, not control. But the sacred urge to rise, to ascend from who you were into who you were meant to become. This force doesn't beg. It doesn't seek applause. It doesn't need permission. It simply demands growth. It is the part of you that refuses to settle. The part that feels strangled by routine. The part that knows in silence you are capable of more. Every time you felt ashamed of staying the same, that was the will to power. Every time your soul stirred while living a life that felt too small, that was the will to power. It whispers in moments of honesty and screams in seasons of stagnation. It is not a luxury. It is not nice to have. It is your nature. When you resist it, you suffer. Not because you're weak, but because you were not built to remain unchanged. You were made to evolve, to shed old skin, to confront yourself, and walk through your own darkness. But what does the world tell you instead? Be happy. Don't rock the boat. Fit in. Make it look perfect. You were told to chase comfort, success, safety, to smile when your spirit wanted to scream, to adapt to systems built to shrink you. And slowly, you learn to suppress that inner fire. You learn to survive instead of live. But deep down, the will to power never dies. It waits. And when it has waited too long, it shows up as depression, as anxiety, as this aching confusion that haunts you in stillness. You call it burnout. But truthfully, it's the pain of unlived potential. Because real suffering isn't failing. Real suffering is staying the same, while something inside you knows you were made to transform. You weren't meant to be tame. You were meant to be tested. And every moment you choose comfort over challenge, you bury that power deeper beneath your habits, your doubts, your fears. But the day you stop running from discomfort, the day you say, "This version of me ends here," that's when the will to power awakens. Not as rage, but as resolve. Not as noise, but as clarity. It's a fire you carry not to destroy others, but to forge yourself. And once you feel it rise, once you sense what's been buried all this time, there's no pretending anymore. No more hiding. No more shrinking to fit places you've outgrown. Because the moment you wake up to this force, you are no longer who you were yesterday, and you never will be again. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Who decided what's right? What's wrong? What's good? What's bad? Most of us never really choose the values we live by. We inherit them from family, school, culture, religion. We're told what to believe before we even know how to think for ourselves. And for a while, that feels safe. Until one day, it doesn't. Because deep down, something starts to feel off. Like you're living a life that fits someone else's rules, but not your own truth. That's exactly what Nietzsche saw in the modern world. He said something radical: God is dead. And what he meant wasn't that religion is bad, but that the old ways of defining meaning had collapsed. People were still going through the motions, praying, following rules, repeating moral codes, but they no longer truly believed. The foundation was gone, but no one dared to admit it. So Nietzsche asked, what happens when the world no longer gives you clear answers? What do you do when the system stops making sense? Most people panic. They cling to whatever feels familiar, even if it's no longer true. They follow crowds. They avoid questions. They pretend things are fine while they slowly die inside. But Nietzsche offered a different path. He said, don't go back. Don't pretend. Instead, take responsibility. Create your own meaning. He called this the revaluation of values, breaking away from old beliefs you were handed, and building a life based on what you know deep down to be real. It's not easy. It's not popular, but it's the only honest way forward. And then, he took it a step further. He asked one question, a question so intense, it changes everything. If you had to live this exact life, same mistakes, same struggles over and over, forever, would you be okay with that? This is what Nietzsche called eternal recurrence. It's not about reincarnation. It's about how you're living right now. Because if the idea of repeating your current life forever makes you feel regret, shame, or dread, then maybe you're not living the way you should. And that's where the idea of the overman comes in. The overman is the one who dares to say, I will no longer live a borrowed life. I will break the loop. I will become who I truly am, even if it costs me everything. The overman creates meaning. He doesn't wait for it. He doesn't ask permission. He doesn't need applause. He lives with depth, with power, with purpose, and he shapes life instead of being shaped by it. But here's the truth. To become that version of yourself, you have to be willing to burn what no longer serves you. Old habits, old roles, old masks. You have to start again from nothing. That's terrifying. And that's why most people don't do it. Because the moment you step away from comfort, you step into something far more difficult but far more powerful. You step into pain. And that is where we're going next. There's a lie that's been repeated so many times. Most people believe it without question. The lie is this: if you're in pain, something's gone wrong. If you're hurting, you've failed. If you're struggling, you're broken. But Nietzsche saw through that illusion. He knew something most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid. Pain is not a flaw in the system. Pain is the system. There is no transformation without it. There is no strength without wounds. There is no breakthrough without breaking. Growth isn't graceful. It's messy. It's brutal. It's full of collapse, doubt, fear, and loneliness. But those who rise, those who become something greater, do so because of the fire they walked through, not despite it. Nietzsche once wrote, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." He didn't mean poetic chaos. He meant real chaos. The kind that tears at your identity, that strips away what's fake, that leaves you standing naked in front of who you really are. And if you're willing to face that chaos without numbing it, avoiding it, or running from it, then something changes. Pain becomes your teacher. Suffering becomes your forge. And your life stops being a reaction and becomes a response. You don't grow in spite of the pain. You grow because of it. Think about the turning points in your life, the moments that shaped you the most. Were they easy? Were they painless? Of course not. They broke you, but they also built you, piece by piece, layer by layer, truth by painful truth. And this is the test. Most people try to go around suffering. They distract themselves. They blame others. They keep their pain alive by refusing to confront it. But the few, the rare few, go through it. They sit with the discomfort. They let the pain speak. And when it's done speaking, they rise with clarity, with courage, with depth. Because here's the brutal but freeing truth. You cannot become someone new while still protecting the version of you that was built to survive, not to thrive. You have to be willing to let that version die. And that kind of death hurts. But on the other side of that pain, if you stay present, if you stay awake, there is power, there is peace, and there is a self you haven't even met yet. So no, pain is not a punishment. It's a passage, a bridge between who you were and who you are meant to become. And after every breakdown, there is an opportunity to be reborn if you have the courage to let go of the version of you that no longer belongs. Comfort is quiet. Comfort is polite. Comfort never yells. It doesn't demand anything from you except one thing: stay the same. It sounds like peace, but it's not. It's seduction. A slow lullaby that puts your soul to sleep while keeping your body alive. You tell yourself you're just resting, that you're being responsible, that you'll take the leap when the time is right. But days pass, weeks pass, years pass, and still nothing moves. Because comfort doesn't want your growth. It wants your compliance. And it's clever. It doesn't bind you in chains. It wraps you in soft blankets of excuses and tells you their truth. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. I need more clarity. I'll start after this next phase. I'm just waiting for the right sign. Sound familiar? These thoughts aren't facts. They're stories. Stories that keep you in the same place. Stories that protect your comfort while killing your power. Nietzsche didn't see comfort as a gift. He saw it as a slow suicide. A passive decay of everything strong inside you. Not because you were defeated, but because you stopped showing up. You stopped confronting life. You chose peace over presence, safety over growth, familiarity over becoming lens. But let's be honest, comfort rarely brings real peace. It brings numbness. It brings days that blur into each other. It brings a sense of control, while your inner fire flickers quietly in the background. Until one day, you look in the mirror and don't recognize who you've become. Not because you changed, but because you never did. And here's the harsh truth. Most people stay in that place forever. They build entire lives around avoiding discomfort. They stay in jobs that drain them, in relationships that dull them, in habits that slowly suffocate them. And all the while, they convince themselves, this is just how life is. This is what being an adult looks like. This is stability. But stability isn't always strength. Sometimes, it's stagnation in disguise. Nietzsche called this kind of life inner decay, a corrosion that happens not in your body, but in your spirit. When the will to power, that deep urge to evolve, is ignored for too long, it starts to rot. It turns into apathy, into doubt, into quiet desperation. And the world will tell you that's normal, that it's enough to function, to get by, to be agreeable, to live in the middle. But that's not life. That's slow extinction. And no one can save you from it. Because the enemy isn't out there. It's not society, not your parents, not your partner, not your circumstances. It's the smaller version of you, the one who fears failure more than stagnation, the one who worships comfort more than potential, the one who keeps telling you, not yet, not today, maybe later. That version, it has to die. Not gently, not eventually, but decisively, because as long as it lives, you are enslaved by your own hesitation. Your energy will be trapped inside routines that bore you, environments that shrink you, and identities that no longer fit. So what do? You commit an act of personal revolution. You betray that version of yourself that was built to survive and make room for the version that was born to rise. You stop waiting for permission. You stop looking for signs. You stop asking for comfort. And you start choosing freedom, even when it's terrifying. Because freedom isn't found in what's easy. It's found in what's true. And truth is rarely comfortable. But here's the promise. If you have the courage to kill the voice that keeps you small, the one that calls itself realistic while it robs you of purpose, then something sacred happens. A door opens, not out there, but inside you. A door to clarity, to strength, to actual peace, not the kind that comes from avoidance, but the kind that comes from becoming. And if you have the courage to let that smaller version of you die, you'll finally begin to touch what freedom really feels like. Sooner or later, life will ask you a question that you can't ignore. Not with distractions, not with ambition, not even with success. It's not a question about your career, or your relationships, or your goals. It's this: will you choose to grow or choose to stay the same? Will you choose truth or comfort? Will you choose strength or safety? It sounds simple, but it's not. Because the world around you is built to push you toward the easy path. From the moment you're born, you're taught to seek approval, avoid conflict, stay agreeable, play by the rules, fit in, blend in, don't make people uncomfortable, don't make them think too hard, don't stand out. And if you do that well enough, you'll be rewarded. You'll be called nice, balanced, stable, successful. You'll be liked, followed, approved. But deep down, will you be alive? That's the trap Nietzsche saw. He saw that most people aren't really living. They're complying. They're performing. They're repeating. not because they're weak, but because it's easier, because comfort feels like safety, even when it's a cage. And he said something radical. You must be willing to be misunderstood if you want to be free. Because strength, true strength, comes at a cost. You will be judged. You will be rejected. You will be feared, not because you're dangerous, but because you remind people of the power they've given up. Because when you live with truth, when you break free from the scripts, you become a mirror. And mirrors make people uncomfortable. So you have a choice. You can live for applause. You can live for acceptance. You can live for the illusion of peace. Or you can live for something real. To speak your truth, even when it shakes your voice. To pursue a path that no one else understands. To walk away from comfort, not because you hate it, but because it no longer matches your soul. And here's the truth. Nietzsche understood better than anyone. You can't have both. You can't have strength and comfort. You can't have transformation and predictability. You can't become who you were meant to be and still stay who you've always been. One of them has to die. The small version of you, the one that plays safe, seeks validation, asks for permission to be real. Or the future version, the one that lives with clarity, leads with fire, moves with purpose. And no one can make that choice for you. Not your parents, not your friends, not your followers, only you. So ask yourself, honestly, what are you protecting? What parts of you have been kept alive only because they're familiar, not because they're true? Are you still pretending to be who you were, just so you don't have to feel the discomfort of becoming someone else? Are you still trying to be liked when you could be real? Because here's what happens when you finally choose strength. You'll lose people. You'll confuse people. You'll disturb the status quo. But in exchange, you'll wake up every day knowing who you are. You'll look in the mirror and see someone who refused to be tamed. Someone who said no to mediocrity. Someone who burned the version of themselves that was built for approval so that they could become the version built for power. And that kind of life, that kind of clarity is rare. It's earned. It's not comfortable, but it's real. So no, this is not just a motivational video. This is a decision point, a line in the sand. You can stay in the cycle, repeat the days, talk about change, repost quotes, or you can step forward, choose power, and become the one the world cannot control. So here's the final question. Will you bury yourself in a quiet, acceptable, edited version of life? Or will you rise as someone who no longer fits inside anyone's expectations? Someone who created themselves from the fire of self-honesty, self-discipline, and inner truth. Because in the end, you don't become powerful by being accepted. You become powerful by being unapologetically alive. Now speak your truth. Comment below, what version of you needs to die so something greater can be born? This space is not for performance. This is for those ready to choose. Choose clarity. Choose transformation. Choose the version of you that refuses to be forgotten.